Well, one aspect of this four-season look is the variety of conifers. Well, the variety of conifers. And that variety can come from the habit or form. Maybe we could call that shape rather than habit or form, but often the silhouette, the color, and the texture. The variety is just about limitless. Let's look at some of these with interesting habit. Okay, this is a miniature on the upper left, the blue pygmy juniper, and I'll admit that this one might take some looking, and I was giving it as an example of how very small the conifers can be. This is in a pot about that big. I cropped it so you didn't have a whole hand in it, but that's a thumb here on the left, and it sort of puts in proportion how the size of this plant. This is the kind of thing you'd put in a rock garden or maybe a container or a trough garden or something, and we'll talk about those specific ones. It grows less than a 1 inch per year. So, you know, you're not going to be out there with your pruners very often on the blue pygmy. Now, the one on the right is the ball cypress in its autumn glory. This is a native of our southeast U.S., and it's one of the few conifers that are not evergreen. This is turned bronze in the fall, and it'll soon lose its needles. There's a trio of those that are quite beautiful at Brookside, just behind the conservatory there. And there's a group of them along Kensington Parkway at the first bridge there. I kind of watch for those because I do think this fall look is very pretty. Now this is a big guy. It's going to grow to 50 feet or more, and its natural habitat is in a wetland. The weeping pine is a living sculpture, in my opinion. Just a beautiful specimen plant for a small garden, and it's going to grow to something like 10 by 10. Much smaller than what we think of as a white pine. I'm going to use the word dwarf over and over and over because as homeowners we're looking for dwarf plants. The white pine for most of us is way too big, but we can get some of that look with these dwarf plants. And I've got a few more that are just perfect for our suburban gardens. The one on the left is the beanpole yew, and I love its name. It is going to grow to about 8 to 10 feet, but it's going to only have a footprint of a foot or two. Remember that yews, however, are deer magnets. If you have deer, you want to pass by the yews. On the upper right is the icy blue juniper, and that actually is spelled right. That's kind of a tumbler, and it's one of the newer ground cover blues with that cascading habit. It would be great for tumbling over a wall or holding a slope, that kind of thing. It's not going to be but about 4 inches tall, ground cover essentially, but it will grow in time to 6 or 8 feet wide. That's got to be taken into account. And the one below it is the Japanese plum yew, and I find a lot of gardeners don't know this plant. It's a cousin of the Japanese yew, but it has its own genera, Cephalotaxus. And while the yew is a deer magnet, the plum yew is deer resistant. It works in the shade. It's bolder in texture and softer in texture than the yew, and it's going to grow to about 2 feet tall, 5 feet wide. I think it's a fine foundation plant, front of the border, mass plantings, that kind of thing. It's kind of slow growing, so you'd want to take that into account too if you wanted to use that. It has a very nice upright form as well.